Participants, friends, development is changing. The conventional paradigm used for central government funding and centralized budget allocations, it's changing. Today, especially in India, we must leverage government funding to ensure and to create solutions that simultaneously help build businesses and accelerate national and local development. A meaningful partnerships with businesses can drive the next wave of progress towards achieving the SDGs, bringing solutions that make business sense, but also solutions that are not just philanthropic, but that can combine profitable investments and impact in a way we have never seen before. In this context, we firmly believe that SDGs provide a framework to incentivize investments driven by impact and not by profit alone. I would also like to congratulate the UN Global Compact for launching the Forward Fast initiative. Platforms like this are critical in bringing all stakeholders together to share experiences and new perspectives for our efforts to fast-track the SDGs. And to underline at the end, before concluding, the private sector is critical to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And we look forward to continue working with the private sector to truly leaving no one behind. I thank you. Namaste.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Isabel, for sharing your thoughts with us. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to welcome our chief guest and hear his thoughts on SDGs. Our chief guest, Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, Union Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas and Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs in the Government of India, understands the importance and relevance of SDGs in today's globalized world better than most of us. He is spearheading the cause of promoting sustainability through multiple SDG initiatives. Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, please.
Thank you very much. My colleague and collaborator, Shri Arun Kumar Singh Ji, who is also the president of the US GCNI, apart from being chairman and CEO of ONGC. Madam Resident Representative Isabel Shan, the Executive Director of the UN GCNI in India, Mr. Ratnesh Ji, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. Whenever I am invited to address a gathering like this, my research team invariably puts in an opening sentence which says, I have had a long association with the UN. But I'm going to call them out today because the fact that I've had a long association with the UN is well known. But they should have also said that there are 3 UNs out there. One is the UN which is in the Secretariat. I don't mean only in New York, but in Geneva, in Vienna, in Nairobi, all the UN centers in India. And then there are the member states which are accredited to the UN, both at the headquarters in New York and its different regional headquarters. Excuse me, if you have a conversation to carry out, please carry it out outside. Yeah. And there is a 3rd UN, which is perhaps in some respects, I hope you will forgive me, even more important than the member states or the Secretariat. Those are those who bring up the UN family through civil society, non-governmental organizations, and initiatives like this. And I can say with a great degree of humility that I've had the privilege of serving all the three UNs. I was permanent representative of India and ambassador to the UN in Geneva. I was permanent representative and ambassador of India to the UN in New York. I presided over the Security Council. I have also, and I asked Madame, I said, how long have you been in UNDP? She said, I joined in 2009. So I did a rough calculation, and I'm probably 20 years senior to her in the UNDP, so please forgive me. So this is what happens when you... So I had the privilege of working on a UNDP-funded program for technical assistance for the multilateral trade negotiations, the Uruguay round, and I was stationed in Geneva. My salary was paid by the UNDP, but we were stationed in Geneva, and I was in UNCTAD. And then there comes the third, which is the think tank part of the UN. And I was senior vice president of the Independent International Peace Institute and Secretary General of the Independent Commission on Multilateralism, which was appointed to look into the functioning of the UN to see if it is fit for purpose when it celebrated its 75th or 70th anniversary. So I've done a bit of all three, and therefore, even though I had a very packed program and my colleagues told me that you have this invitation, I said I'll go there because I attach a lot of importance to this, particularly since your theme today, which is anchored in the SDGs, and your theme today is advancing sustainable India. And I thought it'll give me an opportunity to speak about what we are doing on the sustainable agenda in the two ministries with which I have the privilege of being associated and what we are doing in India. And I think the facts are pretty well documented. But before I go on to the India story, let me also say that in any discussion on this, when you reach the halfway mark of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals or Agenda 2030, there is cause for worry. That is cause for worry. Why? Because in many parts of the world, both on the climate agenda, the number of people who lack safely managed drinking water, in 2022, it was 2.2 billion, and 3.5 billion people lacked safely managed sanitation. An additional $3.3 to $4.5 trillion need to be mobilized every year to close the financing gap. And the UNGC estimates that over a billion people, working people, 1/3 of all workers, are perhaps earning less than they need to give them a decent standard of living. And if you want to continue with these gloomy, pessimistic studies, it also says that at the current rate, it will take 140 years for women to be represented equally in positions of leadership in the workplace, 300 years to end child marriage, and 47 years for equal representation in national parliaments. But that, my friends, is the global story. The India story is very different. And I can tell you with confidence that when I was in New York and we were towards the end of the phase called the MDGs, or the Millennium Development Goals, I had severe and very serious difficulties with the conceptualization of those goals, because those goals were conceptualized in the think tank of the Western industrial democracies called the OECD. A lot of intelligent, learned people sat down together and decided, you must do this, you must do this, you must do this. They came as prescriptions to those who needed rectification. Well, they were almost in the final stages, and then we concluded that work. But I was determined at that stage to point out to anybody who was scared to listen, and I went to New York, if I remember correctly, in 2009, May 2009. I was very clear, and all my other colleagues were very clear, that whenever we do the next round of such goals, they must be bottoms up, that the conceptualization of those goals must come from the societies which need the change. And I think that is the fundamental difference between the Millennium Development Goals and Agenda 2030, which is the Sustainable Development Goals. Make no mistakes, the Millennium Development Goals succeeded because a large country, China, succeeded in pulling millions of people out of poverty with a little bit of help from India, Nigeria, South Africa. But the Sustainable Development Goals will succeed because India will succeed. The Sustainable Development Goals are succeeding in terms of overall number. Why? In the last 10 years, I think I keep struggling with these numbers because sometimes they say 250 million, but that's a figure for 10 years. We have succeeded in lifting 250 million people out of multidimensional poverty in India in the last 10 years. And if you take the 4 years figure, it is 140 million. But that's just the beginning of the story. Here is a society which in 2014, I'm going to come to the sanitation agenda. You know, when the Honorable Prime Minister announced from the ramparts of the Red Fort on 15th August 2014, that it was his dream, resolve, that by the time we celebrate the 150th birth anniversary of the Mahatma, the father of the nation, which was to be on 2nd October 2019, India should be open defecation free. Not only did we succeed, we have now gone on to ODF+, ODF++, etc. And the two basic schemes, Swachh Bharat Mission and Amrut, which was a scheme to provide drinking water to 500 cities with a population of over 100,000, they not only succeeded. In the case of Swachh Bharat, there was a delay. One state took a little longer. But they all became open defecation free. But more than that, it's not based on self-certification. You can't just get up one day and say, I'm ODF. No, it's based on third-party verification. And some people have lost their certification. But now there's so much consciousness. When we do a Swachhta Sarvekshan or a pan-India competition, it pains people when they're told that they have dropped in the ranking, and it excites people, makes them happy when they have come up, and some places do invariably better than others. The two schemes, Swachh Bharat Mission and Amrut, in their second revision, together have a provisioning of 4,71,000 crores. What is that in US dollars terms, 4,71,000 crores? Huh? Little more than 50 billion US dollars. So that's the kind of provisioning the state is doing. Now, when we come to issues relating to women's empowerment, this is again a subject I'm pretty passionate about for a good reason. That so far all the schemes in India have been women-centered, development-oriented. But now we are moving from the women-centered development to women-led development. And the women-centered development means in our affordable housing, unlike the previous government which made a big song and dance, under the JNURM, they only sanctioned a total of 13 lakh. 13 lakhs, a lakh being 100,000. 13 lakh homes, they only produced 8 lakhs. Since the Modi government assumed office in May 2014, and this scheme started in June 2015, we have sanctioned 4 crores, which is 40 million. And the defining characteristic of that is the title of the house should be either in the name of the lady of the house or co-jointly. So 71% of the homes which have been sanctioned under the bouquet of verticals available are in the name of the lady of the house. Now, see where that takes you. The building of 11 crore toilets, the building of affordable housing, building of a toilet gives dignity to the girl child. Building of a house and the title being in the lady of the house, she is no longer vulnerable in an adverse domestic situation. But you seek all the other schemes. And now, finally, we have come to the surprise of many that after the next census, which should be out soon, and the delimitation exercise, there will be 33.3% seats reserved for our sisters in legislative assemblies and the central parliament. Please tell me how many other countries have that. So on all fronts, I mean, I'm talking about women's empowerment only because I think that's global SDG 5, right? Now I can talk about SDG 11, inclusive cities, etc., but we're moving ahead in all of them. I want to come to a few minutes on the petroleum and natural gas side. Sometimes I find a narrative is created in some parts of the world where the full understanding of what is at stake is not realized. Now, it's not as if there is a shortage of energy in the world. No, there isn't. There is no shortage of traditional energy, and there is no shortage of the green transitioning we have to do. All of it has to be done at a price so that the producer can take it to the consumer after the due processing in a rational manner. Let me spend a minute or two on the traditional energy. Today, before the production cuts by the producing countries cartel, there used to be 102 million barrels of oil per day which was released into the market. Because of the production cuts, the amount being released is only 97, if I'm correct. That is then sold all over the world. It goes into the refineries, it's processed into petrol and diesel, and it's taken to the consumer. The enormity of the Indian operation needs to be understood in terms of basic figures. We consume something like 5 million barrels of crude oil in a day. And throughout the last few years, there's never been any shortage. So we've had total availability. We are the only country in the world which was able to take energy to the consumer, and over a 2-year period, the price came down. So we have ensured affordability because the central government cut excise and the BJP-ruled states cut their VAT. And third, transition. And that's where I want to make a point. A lot of people think that not enough is being done on transition. No, I think a lot is being done on transition, and the failure is in our ability to comprehend the scale at which the change is taking place. I'm glad that the chairman of ONGC spoke about the extent of change. I can tell you that change is taking place. I think there is a commitment all over to ensure that we move to biofuels, we move to compressed biogas, we move to liquefied natural gas, and we move to green hydrogen. The targets which have been set, because we are a large country, we have developmental challenges. The 2070 net zero target appears to be a little distant, but if you look at my oil marketing companies, all of them have targets, I think, between 2035 and 2045, which are the kind of targets that the Western world also has. Will this come from governmental action? Will it come from the private sector? And that's, I think, what this kind of a platform is all about. It comes from both. If you look at what the government has done, the government can mandate. We mandated that we needed 20% biofuel blending till 2030. Because we were able to accelerate it, we brought that target forward to 2025. Will we complete 20% biofuel blending by 2025, end of the first fiscal year? I'm 100% sure we will. Because if we run into difficulty in one feed, we open up another one. And there are several areas which we have not even contemplated as yet. Today, I think there is going to be some meeting or some flag off where I will be flagging off, I think, 300 petrol stations which will be selling E100. That is not 20% blended fuel, but 100% blended fuel. And where did this idea of 20% blending come from? It came from the automobile industry, because they told us we are 100% sure that up to 20% blended fuel in an automobile will not necessitate any change in the components of the engine. But then, you know, I was ambassador to Brazil, and I recall that you had, at any given point of time, an ability at a petrol pump to decide whether you wanted 20% ethanol or 80% ethanol. And no, it depended on the price that day. I am sure that what we are going to start at 300, 400 petrol pumps selling 100% ethanol will increase. When we started E20, the Honorable Prime Minister flagged off E20 in April last year in Bengaluru at the India Energy Week. Today, I think E20 is selling at 10,000 petrol pumps or thereabout. 9,700 was the last one. I want to come briefly to electric vehicles. It's very easy to be cynical and say, well, electric vehicles don't make full sense if the grid is not green. Oh, sure. But then it's cleaner than what you've got, so you're making a transition. An ONGC chairman was telling me about electric vehicles prices. I mentioned to him that in the last few days, in India also there's been a price cut. But then he was telling me he came across a news that in another very large country, the price cut has been 20%. So products will position themselves. And I think as far as we as consumers and as, if I may say, well-wishers and custodians of the planet are concerned, if we find that positioning of products is for green products or greener products, we should applaud it. And now you come to green hydrogen. I have always said that the green hydrogen story in India lends itself to success, because for green hydrogen you need a country which has a large consuming base, large amount of demand, production can take place locally, and the consumption can take place locally. And India is one such case. So I think the IOCL chairman is not here. Please remind him. I'm looking forward to his 15 electric green hydrogen buses flying when, Rasal, next few days. So please make note of that. He said there are 8, 10 already, we want all 15. That's where it comes into the popular consciousness. And if you look at in the India Energy Week in Goa earlier this month, from the 5th to the 9th, one of the OMCs, I think it was BPCL, they showed an electrolyzer, domestically produced, which is cheaper by 30% to anything that could be imported. So if you see the changes taking place in the green hydrogen front, the government brought up a very nice policy after the Prime Minister announced in 15th August 2021, if I remember correctly, that we would pursue green hydrogen in mission mode. We have the PLI scheme covering the manufacture of electrolyzers. We have a government decision where the Cabinet Secretary will coordinate the encouragement of green hydrogen in 6 different ministries. I think if you look at the overall picture, India is a good case where not just consumers but even investors are increasingly paying attention to environmental, social, and governance risks. And I think that is why money is coming into these areas. Because the government by itself can only devise an ecosystem. Another example I'm very fond of quoting these days is if the European Union actually goes ahead and mandates 5% blending of sustainable aviation fuel in aircraft, you will need a lot of sustainable aviation fuel. And where will that sustainable aviation fuel be produced? It will be produced in countries like Brazil and India. Look, we've struggled with these things in the past. When I was ambassador to Brazil, we had a target of 1.5% blending in 10 of our states and union territories. We were not able to get it done because the systems that we devised were not in a position to respond to that. And along came Mr. Modi. We set a target of 10% blending by November 22. We were able to do it 5 months in advance. And now we have a target of 20% blending by 2030. We brought it forward by 5 years. I think I want to acknowledge and applaud our industry leaders who have pushed the 2030 or the SDG agenda forward through impactful CSR initiatives. But we must also recognize that CSR is not enough by itself. It is just the start of a process. Therefore, I think the Indian businesses that have initiated comprehensive operational reforms, and ONGC is a shining example of that, needs to be applauded. ONGC has integrated sustainable practices into its core operations to enable a reduction in Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions by 17% in the last 5 years of its operation. Many other industry leaders, be they in the private sector or public, have taken similar actions. I'm saying this not only because my friend Mr. Singh is sitting here, but it's an example which is well documented. If somebody claims that Scope 1, Scope 2 reduction by 17%, it's a very significant move. Clearly, the needle is moving. Only last year, 82% of C-suite executives in India expressed a strong intent to hire professionals with expertise in green skills and sustainability technologies. This, I believe, is the beginning of the accelerated action that we want to see in this area. I want to conclude by saying that as we in India move towards becoming a Viksit Bharat, our commitments to the Lima Conference, 2015 Paris Agreement, our Panchamrit Plan, and Women-led Development Guide are thinking. As we embark on this journey, collaboration and cooperation and collective action will be paramount to our success. The UNGC serves as a valuable ally, providing guidance, expertise, and a platform for collaboration. I fully support the Forward Faster 2030 initiative in India. It can be a meaningful mechanism to promote responsible business practices, driving sustainable development, and fostering partnership for positive change. I am confident that together we can harness the power of innovation, collaboration, and leadership to create a better world for ourselves and our future generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your visionary and inspiring thoughts. Your support for the UNGC Forward Faster Agenda 2030 means a lot to all of us. And your leadership is truly steering the Sustainable Development Goals in the right direction. With this, we would like to open the stage for a few questions to our Honorable Chief Guest. And we have few questions, I'm told. Yes, please.
Thank you so much, sir. Namaskar. Thank you for this insightful address.
Please identify yourself, because I think I may know you, but the others should also.
I'm Rishi